This is extremely important for everyone. Not just we want to talk about sports and how it relates to domestic violence. Charles Barkley just came out, was it this week or last week, talking about domestic violence in
This week.
sports. And we know that uh, there have been players who have in multiple sports that have been accused of domestic violence, and sometimes it gets swept under the rug and not dealt with properly by agencies as well. So even if charges aren't pressed, which a lot of the times it's not in domestic violence cases because the person being abused, the victim, they don't want to press the charges because things might get worse, or they just want the person to leave them alone. And they think that by not pressing charges, it might calm things down more. There's so many different reasons. But when we look at the sports industry as well, we don't necessarily see any severe penalties for domestic violence.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Charles Barkley was coming out to say too.
Yeah, I think that there's a trend. There's a trend from the sports leagues to try to push it to law enforcement.
Mm.
They always say what they always say. We don't know the facts. We're gonna wait for the investigation to come out, and then after that, I've heard, uh, um, you know, people drop cases because of the person that the victim decided to drop charges. And if there's no charges, then nothing can really happen,
Exactly.
And then it's his own message. His own
Yeah,
I
so
think.
law enforcement didn't do anything. So no, this
Oh,
person doesn't need to have any penalties against them or anything within their agency, because apparently if law enforcement doesn't do anything about domestic violence, he doesn't have to do it.
yeah. And again, because they probably get scared of being sued. I could see a player getting a lawyer suing the league because by law they committed no crime. So how would you determine that they committed a crime if the law enforcement said there's no crime committed? So I think people are just a little bit.
Well, they weren't charged with a crime. It doesn't mean the crime wasn't committed, right?
Correct. There
I
wasn't.
think we need to
Correct.
be careful with those words.
Right.
There
It's
was no
not
charge.
innocent. It's not guilty. When you're found not guilty, that doesn't mean you're innocent.
Didn't mean it happened.
Yeah.
You just didn't found that, right. You weren't charged.
Yeah, or the charges weren't pressed for the varying reasons that they don't get pressed.
Right.
Should we play the Charles Barkley sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we have it.
The sound was provided by NBA TNT.
I got one more question. I don't care. He says go to commercial, but I got a serious question for you. There's a couple of disturbing incidents of domestic violence in the NBA right now. What are we doing to address that? Because that is you can't put your hands on women, man. And we should be at the forefront in sports when the men hit women. So what are we as a league going to do about that?
Well, again, that's an area where we're not looking to compete against other leagues when you say forefront. So I think all the leagues are trying to address this issue. But I know, again, our Players Association, credit to them, this wasn't adversarial. We put in place a new program for how we deal with, first of all, accusations of domestic violence even before they're prosecuted. Part of it goes to training of our players, counseling of our players to make sure they understand during high stress situations that, like, obviously never resort to violence against anyone. And so we're addressing it. We have, state of the art counseling professionals dealing with our players. But of course, and if a guy, does cross the line, the consequences are enormous.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
That was Adam
consequences are
Silver.
enormous if they get charged with something. One of the other things too, they talk about domestic violence, and many people think of it incorrectly as only physical violence.
Right.
Correct.
And
There's
even people who
emotional,
are
financial.
in domestic violence relationships, they'll say, well, they didn't hit me. They didn't punch me. They didn't push me. They didn't do this. But we see a lot of the psychological abuse that comes with domestic violence as well, because domestic violence is really about power and control. And so
Right.
you'll see things with degradation. You'll see things where the victim becomes isolated. The friends they used to hang out with, they don't hang out with them anymore because the abuser is controlling all of their interactions with others. And it might seem really flattering at first, where this person just wants to spend all their time with you and that's it. But then it turns into a level of isolation that this person loses
Yeah.
their belief that they have people they can reach out on and lean on for help and try to get help out of their situation. So, we like to provide resources for people as well. So we just want to go ahead and give the National Domestic Violence Hotline as well, which is 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START to 88788. That is the National Domestic Violence Hotline.